Hello everyone and welcome. Apple just had their first major event of the year. They announced a bunch of different products like it's always the case with these events, but today we're going to talk about one in particular, namely the iPhone SE. And we're going to focus on the iPhone SE for a bunch of different reasons. It's the cheapest iPhone that they sell, it's the entry level into the iPhone lineup, and also because the market for mid-range or cheaper smartphones is enormously competitive. So has Apple come up with another success because they've had two generations of SE previously that did tremendously well, or is this a little bit of a miss and you should really overlook it? As was the case with the previous two generations of the iPhone SE, Apple followed the same exact successful formula to a T. So basically, this is an external design that's dated and frankly quite old at this point, but they pair that with the A15 chip, which is their flagship chip that ships in the iPhone 13, and it's basically the best chip in the smartphone industry. The advantage in doing this is that they can sell it for much cheaper than the iPhone 13, for example, and thus they get an iPhone in the hands of millions of other users who would, for various reasons, not spend the money that an iPhone 13, for instance, would cost. But is it a good one? Let's start with the beginning, the design. It's absolutely identical to its predecessor, the iPhone SE 2020. This is basically a refresh of that phone as far as I'm concerned. And honestly, if you hated the looks before, you're gonna still hate them because it's basically the same exact shape that Apple has been selling since they introduced the iPhone 6 all of those years back. I personally used the SE 2020 last year. I did a bunch of videos here on the channel. I used it as my daily driver for several months, and frankly, I like the design. Yes, the device looks dated, it comes with big bezels at the top and the bottom, and the 4.7-inch display is probably among the smallest smartphones on sale today. However, the design itself feels pretty good in the hand, feels rather premium, and I certainly like the small form factor. The display is the exact same that was on board the iPhone SE 2020, and from a hardware perspective, so are the cameras. The cameras do get a few extra modes brought on by the newer chip inside. I don't really care about the fact that they chose not to include cinematic mode in the camera features. I think that's a little bit of a gimmick. I already talked about it here on the channel. But I think it's a little bit of a problem that they chose to not include any night mode in the camera capabilities of the iPhone SE. The chip inside can definitely support it, but Apple simply chose to not give this feature to the SE, maybe not to make it even more compelling in front of the more expensive iPhones. The big changes concerning the SE though come inside. First, we get the A15 chip inside, which is a very big deal. This comes paired with 5G, so it gives the iPhone SE the latest and greatest in terms of processing power in the mobile world, and also gives it a very reliable 5G connection. Yes, I know 5G is not yet the massive breakthrough we thought it would be. There's no particular killer apps that require it, but the much higher speeds do bring a quality of life improvement. And personally, I think 5G has reached a level of maturity and support in many markets, and not including it in a smartphone would be a mistake at this point. Another massive plus is the chip, the aforementioned A15, which has the exact same setup as in the iPhone 13. And if you didn't know already, the A15 chip is the fastest mobile chip in any smartphone out there. Barring a few high-end gaming phones on the Android side of things, there's really not much that comes close to it. So packing such a powerful punch in a small, cheap phone makes this a great phone in terms of performance and especially good in terms of future proofing. It will easily last in the next 3-4 iOS updates while still giving more than decent performance. Since we're talking about internals, there's another big change that Apple hinted on yesterday, and one that I think is super important. My biggest gripe with the previous iPhone SE 2020 was the fact that the battery life was really poor. The device could barely get you through a day with even the most moderate of usage. Apple seems to have found a way to increase the battery size without changing the external dimensions, because the SE 2022 has the exact same external size as the SE 2020. So they didn't pull the same trick that they used when they moved from the iPhone 12 to the iPhone 13, with the 13 being a few millimeters thicker to accommodate a slightly larger battery. So what happens here is probably they shifted some internal components around, and they even hinted at this in their presentation. Maybe they altered the packaging a little bit, found a way to fit in a battery that may be 5% larger than the previous one, or maybe 10%, I don't know. What we do know though is that on their own website, Apple quotes the SE 2022 as having 2 hours more video playback than its predecessor, so going to 15 hours instead of 13, and it also goes up to 50 hours of audio playback as opposed to the 40 hours of the previous model. However, I still think the battery life in the iPhone SE is not going to be among the class leaders, that's for sure. Maybe it's going to be a little bit better than the preceding model. Well, I kind of expected that. I hoped for a little bit more than what we got, but I'm still happy that they improved this major weakness in this phone. Before we reach final conclusions, there is one more bit of bad news though. The price. The price has gone up from $399 to $429. Not a massive increase, but here in this particular segment where buyers are a lot more price conscious, this is definitely not welcome news. I really wish that Apple had found a way to keep the price the same as before, but clearly including the A15 chip and a 5G modem alongside it means that, well, the price really had to go up a little bit. So what are my thoughts on the iPhone SE 2022? Well, those who know this channel and who've seen a bunch of my videos know that I'm a value for money type of guy, so I'm super excited to see them refresh the SE 2020. Granted, it has its shortcomings, it's not perfect in any way, shape, or form, but let's admit it, at this kind of price point, there's no Android phone that's perfect either. And the iPhone SE retains its biggest competitive advantage, which is performance and longevity, because this phone is going to be around for years. If you buy one tomorrow, you get it out of the box, it will still get updates for its operating system for 5 years down the line, and that makes it enormously good value for money. Another key part for the SE is the fact that carriers will love this thing. Because it has 5G, they're going to push it even more aggressively than its predecessor. As a small side note, somebody commented on one of my last year's videos on the SE 2020 that they got that particular model included for free with a subscription to their carrier. So now with 5G added on top, carriers are going to be even more willing to get people to sign contracts with 5G data included and basically discounting the iPhone SE and making it even more available to a wider audience. I think the target audience doesn't necessarily contain tech enthusiasts, but people who are more cost conscious than anything else. People who just want a phone that doesn't necessarily have all the greatest and latest features, but does have great performance, great software support, and is going to be around for several years, and I think Apple kind of delivered. Is it perfect? No, of course it's not, but do you know any other phone that's perfect at $400? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.